All right, welcome to the podcast. Really excited about today's guest. We have on Paul Chitlik, the author of Rewrite. Thanks for being on the show.
You're welcome. It's good to see you, Jeff.
Thank you. So, you've got a second edition coming out, right? That's what this is?
Well, the second edition is just out. Yeah. One of the things that I tell my students to do, they always ask, well, how do I get started? And I usually say, make a short YouTube video, put it up on YouTube,
Yeah.
and then do another one, and then do another one, then do another one. And eventually you'll get some notice. And that's one way to break in, especially if you have a good story. And after a while, you begin to understand the flow of YouTube and how many people will check into your thing, and you see what's working and what doesn't work. And you can start figuring it out. And maybe you can get an audience and get followers. And eventually the goal is to get a job, an assignment.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, I just interviewed a filmmaker. She did a film called Egghead and Twinkie, and she got funding on TikTok for her film.
Yeah.
And she hired talent off of TikTok.
Right.
And it's the first film to ever do that. So I think, yeah, using YouTube, using Instagram Reels, using TikTok, using all of these things is a great way to get noticed and to practice the craft, you know?
You got to do the 10,000 hours. There's no way around it. You have to write 10,000 hours. You have to produce 10,000 hours. You just have to work at it. And that's the thing that these days it's changed so rapidly as to where you're going to find those 10,000 hours. Just look at the new contracts that are out for the Writers Guild and the Directors Guild and the Screen Actors BAFTA. We don't even know what we're going to be covering in 5 years from now. It could be things that are received on your glasses. You know, I was just talking to you about your earphones and your glasses.
Yeah.
There will be screens in your glasses. I'm sure it's got to happen. And we have to figure out how to write for that and how to monetize that. That's all happening. It happens so fast.
Oh, technology is crazy. I actually have hearing loss in my left ear, and I wear hearing aids. And so I'm actually connected right now to you through my hearing aids. So you buzz right into my head.
Oh.
And with my hearing aids, this is the first generation of hearing aids where people with hearing aids have better hearing than those without.
Wow.
So whereas before it was always about trying to just recover enough hearing so you could have a conversation, I put them in now, and I mean, I can hear chairs creak and crack, you know, and like crazy things. Or if I tune them, I can hear somebody whispering and talking about me. So it's amazing. So it was really cool. I actually had a friend who was like, she didn't believe me. So I took the hearing aid out. She said something. I had no idea what she said. And then I put it back in. I turned them on. I was like, you just said bullshit. and it was true. Yeah, this is absolutely hilarious. And her eyes got really wide. So yeah, technology is ever changing. And they even said the next generation of hearing aids are going to be able to do things like test your blood pressure and blood sugar, which would be insane. Yeah, so, I mean, we're talking like Star Trek level technology. So who knows with AI and software and all that stuff where we will be. But I want to dip into Rewrite. I mean, because this is a book that is taught in courses. It's taught in college classes. The book itself has a lot of great techniques and questions in there that you can answer and practices you can implement to, you know, work on your writing. So what's new in this edition?
Well, what's new in this edition is old and everything else. There's nothing new about writing stories. Homer wrote stories and they were great. And Sophocles wrote stories, and all kinds of other people have written stories in the last 3,000 years or so. It's still all about story. So the difference, what's new in the book is how to write a shorter story, how to get faster. That's all. Because really it's all about story, and story doesn't change. The rules about story, I shouldn't say rules, some of the guidelines that Aristotle observed long ago and far away are still useful today.
Yeah.
And stories are still told in the same way. Now, that doesn't mean there's only one way to tell a story. There's many, many, many ways to tell a story, just like there's many ways to make a car. But every
Hmm.
car has to have wheels. It has to have a steering wheel, it has to have an accelerator, a brake, and every story has to have certain things. Even if it's a small story, even if it's a small car, it still has
Yeah.
to have all those things, just like a large truck has to have all those things. So it's just, I discuss a little bit about how to make your story work in a small way.
Okay.
Uh, One of the things that I talk about in the book is the 7 points of a major feature film. Now, the 7 points apply to sequences and they also apply to scenes. And so that means you can have a 1.5 or 2 minute scene, which would fit perfectly on
Nice.
YouTube or TikTok or something like that.
Yeah.
So it outlines the way that you can approach the structure of a small offering like TikTok or YouTube.
What I think is brilliant about that is, forever when you read a screenwriting book or talked to a screenwriting guru, it was always, oh, you got to write 120 pages, max script. And now nobody wants that, right? Everybody wants less than 120 pages because it's less budget.
Mhm.
So it's good that your techniques allow for that, like a more reasonable page count, but also that you're tweaking it for that short form content, which I think is awesome. Which for some reason I feel like every 5 years it gets shorter. Like I remember when web series were a thing, and
Right.
people are like, oh, I'm doing a 3 minute short and it's a web series on YouTube, and people are like, wow, that's so short. And now I'm seeing like I'm doing a 7 second TikTok and it's like blowing up. You know what I mean? So I think it's great that
Yeah.
your plot points per se that people can break down in 7 steps is awesome.
Yeah, it works in just about every medium. One of the interesting things is, at least for scenes in a movie, you don't always have to have all those 7 points on the page. Sometimes you can start later and end earlier. Sometimes you can even take out the middle, as
Mm,
long as it's understood what happened. And I think that's what's happening with the TikToks and with the YouTube
yeah,
videos. We understand what happened before. We understand what's going to happen after. We
right.
don't need to see everything. Just like you watch a commercial on television now,
Right. Yeah.
most commercials are not 60 seconds like they used to be.
No.
They're not even 30 seconds. They're not even 15 seconds. They're 5 seconds. 5 seconds. And they
Right.
have to put everything in that 5 seconds. And they do that visually, and
Yeah.
they do that with words, and they do that with structure. And
Yeah.
the structure is the same, still is the same. And sometimes it's understood that things happen before and things are going to happen after, but we see what happens now, and that's what makes the impression. So,
I think that's great. Well, one thing I want to talk to you about is because you've written a screenwriting book, I've written a screenwriting book, and what I find interesting is that you will get screenwriters will kind of go into a screenwriting camp. They'll be like, well, I'm a rewrite guy, Paul Chitlik, my guy. Any other screenwriting book doesn't matter. I get his way. And they'll almost argue about it. And you'll see like these Reddit feeds where people are yelling at each other and what quote flame wars and stuff. And one thing I'm like, it doesn't matter who wrote the book. Are they speaking to you? If they're speaking to you, then you understand. I mean, that's why we all do it. That's why there's more than one book, is because you don't know whose voice is going to say it in a way that it clicks with you. And that's all that we want. There's this whole, I don't know, zero sum game mentality with writers of it's me versus you. And if you're winning, I'm not succeeding. And that's not the case at all.
not at all, not at all. There are many ways to get to the center here. There are many ways to write a film. There's no one way to do it. And I always tell my students, look, here's the way that is the easy way that I've found to write a film.
Yeah.
Now, if you find another way or you make an adjustment to this, that's fine with me, so long as you tell a story that's interesting. And so
Yeah.
long as you get the characterization and so long as you get the story out there, it doesn't matter whose method you use. You can use Save the Cat. You can use
Yeah.
story. You
Yeah.
can use Aristotle. You can
Hmm.
use anybody so long as you tell an interesting story. Uh, and I was talking to another instructor who works at USC,
Hmm.
and he had been a student of mine. And so he kind of likes to follow the 7 point structure that I point out. But that's just a way to look at things.
Yeah.
He says that many of his students, especially the students that have been at USC for a while, use the sequence method to
Okay.
write their stories.
Yeah.
And it drives him crazy. And I said, it doesn't matter which method they use,
Yeah.
as long as they get the story out there. You can call it a sequence, or you can call it the first act, or
Yeah.
the first 15 pages to the
Right.
inciting incident, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter what you call it, so long as you write something that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the sequence method
That's
kind of
it.
picked up steam with television, and then you started seeing people making TikToks and stuff with it. So, but tell me about
Yeah,
the central emotional relationship, because from what I understand, that's like a new chapter in the book, right?
right. Well, every successful film, and in this, I'm talking about the best films. I'm not talking about every film.
Okay.
Every successful film has several storylines going. The first storyline is what we usually call the plot, what
Yeah.
the central character has to do to reach his goal or to reach her goal. Then there's always another story, and that's the personal development story. And that
Hmm.
is the central character's got something that he or she needs to overcome inside himself or
Yeah.
herself in order to achieve their goal. And then there's something that we really go to the movies for, and that is the emotional relationship that the
Yeah.
central character has with somebody else. And I think that is essential for all movies. The best movies have that. Some of the hero movies don't always have that, and they fail because of that. If they have something that you can relate to in terms of a relationship that has to be created or mended in a film, it will bring you emotionally into the story.
You're right.
And that's what we need from our audience, is their emotional uh, buy-in into the film.
Yeah.
And when you do that, then they feel things. And that's what people go to the movies for. They
Yeah.
go to the movies to stir an emotion, to learn things too sometimes, but it's always to feel something, to laugh, to cry, to feel surprise, to feel fear. This is why we go to movies. And the reason that we would feel that the most strongly is if your central character is fighting to create or mend a relationship. And the
Yeah.
person that is the central emotional relationship is a very, very important person in that film. And it could be even with the antagonist. That is a possibility in some films.
Yeah.
Uh, and as a matter of fact, I've written a film like that. But it could also be with a wife, a daughter, a partner, whatever it is. The central emotional relationship is one of those key things
Yeah.
that people must keep in mind.
I love it. Reading your book, and I'm reading about central emotional relationship and all of the other subplots, and I'm just like, I have the same thing in my book worded differently, and it's very
There you go.
validating just being able to just read and be like, oh man, this is awesome. So I was really enjoying that. Before I let you go, I want to ask you if there's anything I didn't ask you that I should have.
That's a good question. One of the things I think that new writers need to know is we've been talking about it, we've been going around and around about it, is there's no one way to do things,
Yeah.
and that they need to find their way to do things. And that means that you can find your movie in a lot of different ways. You can find your movie by thinking about the central character. You can find your movie about thinking about a situation. You can
Yeah.
find your movie about thinking about something that happens in the future. You can find your movie about thinking, what if something happened?
Yeah.
When you find what you think your movie is about, that's when you look for who are the characters that will bring out that storyline. What is the place that will help that? What is the situation that will help that? There's no one way to get into it.
Yeah.
Uh, so they shouldn't beat themselves up by thinking, oh, if I don't do it the way that we do it in Save the Cat or in
Yeah.
Story or any of those things, it won't be right. No, it will be right if you find your movie and you find a story and you find a character that is either um, lovable or interesting.
Oh, I love
Doesn't
that.
have to be, yeah, it doesn't have to be lovable all the time. Doesn't have to be, can be a nasty person so long as that person is interesting.
Yeah.
And then you can go from there. We want to see that person. We want to feel with that person. We want to see that person go through life trying to achieve some sort of goal, finding out that that goal is probably not the right goal. Maybe they need to see something that is the need rather than the want, and find the relationship uh, that binds and that eventually binds them so that they are able to achieve their goal.
So the book is titled Rewrite. What is one tip you can give the audience listening right now if they're looking at rewriting their script?
If they're looking at rewriting their script, besides reading my book, the one tip that I would give them is put your script aside for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Let it sit, and then come at it like you're reading somebody else's script, and see if you still like it, and see if it talks to you as if you were another person, and review it and be sincere and be clear about what you want to do with this script, and understand that other people are going to read it without having known how they built it. You built it, you had a lot of things in your mind when you made it, but maybe they don't have those things in mind.
Yeah.
Did you make it clear enough for them to see? So
What a
that's why
great
you have
advice.
to,
No,
you
that's
have to
great.
have,
It's great advice
thank you.
because you're telling them set it aside. You're giving them space to emotionally detach, which I think is great. Emotionally detach from it so you can come at it from a reader's perspective. But I think the hidden note there, which I'm hoping the readers get, is that not only that, but when you write the screenplay, you have in your mind, you've developed these backgrounds, these traits, these drives and motivations and desires that you already know exist. And then you
Mhm.
write the story. But if you're reading it and you have that knowledge and you're attached to it, then the story's going to be perfect. But if you detach from it and then you come at it with fresh eyes and you don't think about all that stuff that you've written in your mind, then you'll see, ooh, maybe I didn't display that in this scene the way I should have.
Right.
Yeah, I love that note.
That's clear. That's a good interpretation of that. It's objectivity is very tough
Yeah,
to do. That's why you have to separate yourself from the script for a couple of weeks and pretend that you're just reading it for the first time.
I love it.
You pretend you're reading it as if you're a reader at a studio, or you're a production executive that's reading the script,
Right.
and from their point of view.
Just don't pretend that you're your
Good.
mom reading the script because she's going to
Yeah,
love it
never
to
do that.
pieces.
You never pretend you're the mom. Never
Yeah,
pretend you're the significant other.
exactly.
Never
Oh,
never pretend you're the best friend. That's never going to work.
Paul, you've been a real pleasure. Thanks again for coming on
Thank
the
you.
show.
Thank you, Jeff. It's been great talking to you.